Bookstack time, Supernormal and Occult edition. And as always, if you want to debate the reality of these phenomena, go fuck off. Read one of these books. Debate them. We'll start with Hans Holzer's The Alchemist. This is a fictionalized account of Emperor Rudolph II, who was super into alchemy, so much so that he kind of neglected running his kingdom. So this is a great look at one of the great supporters of occult work, and a really smart fictionalist idea of what really went down. Speaking of great fiction, maybe the best work of all is The Magus by John Fowles, which is somewhat about magic, somewhat about human psychology, and is just an amazing piece of writing. This is Umberto Eco's Foucault's Pendulum. Foucault's Pendulum? I'm terrible with words. The great part about this book is this is the cat that has 50,000 books in his library. You can see the video on YouTube. And he talks about the magic of what books are in this. And this one gets very surreal, very meta, but also very easy to follow. It is one of the coolest fictionalized texts about what magic is and what's happening in the world, especially with books. Quantum Psychology by Robert Anton Wilson. This book is great because it's so practical. You know, Robert Anton Wilson's so sweet and funny, but this is amazingly good writing on what quantum mechanics is, which is impressive to see from someone who is not a scientist, and also about how you can use this to actually change your life and change your reality tunnels, as they call him. So this is a really practical book from one of the great masters. Here is the Shakespearean Tarot. It's a little out of place here, but if you're into the Tarot and the Bard, this is a very cool, well-done edition. I don't have the cards, just the book. This one, Designed for Church Growth. This I found up in Canada during my last book tour, and I realized I wanted to start a church called the Church of Why Not. This is actually a great one about, if this is what you believe, this is how to grow your church. This is Davies Grimoires, A History of Magic Books. This is very, very academic about when things were published, where, and how the flow of the ideas of the different contents of them came about. And so it was great, but it's really for people very much into it. But as often happens when you read one book, out of it you get one lead that matters so much. From this book, I found out about Waite's The Book of Black Magic, which is the great historian of the Golden Dawn era, collecting the best of from all of these different grimoires. So if you want to know what was in those old magic spells, this is a really great place to start. Waite is excellent. And so below that, you have The Secrets of the UFO by Don Elkins and Carl Ruckert. So if you haven't read anything about the UFO phenomena, this would be a great place to start. It's definitely more of a positivistic take, more the 50s kind of style, but it really goes through the phenomena of what's happening and how people are responding to the phenomena, which alone is of interest. These are also two people who helped to channel the Ra material later on, which is just, an amazing piece. Christian Healing by Charles Fillmore. If you would like to work through the Christian lens, is a very practical look at this. The Devil's Dictionary by Ambrose Bierce. This isn't quite magic and occult, but he did disappear in Mexico, and he's one of the great unsolved cases of where somebody went, and this book's wonderful. Water Babies doesn't belong at all, but it's beautiful illustrations about under the water, so I use that in my book sometimes. This is who turned me on to the Supernormal really in the first place. My buddy Laurent Quasi turned me on to Jeffrey Kripal, who is simply a professor out of Rice University who had a supernormal phenomena experience without drugs and started realizing how much data there was around all of this stuff. He also helped me to learn to stop saying paranormal, which means kind of above normal, beyond normal, and say supernormal instead, which is a more a clear way and precise way of defining what we're talking about. This book, The Flip, is good. It's about different people in history who had a supernormal experience and how that flipped their perspective. I did an interview with him on the Lex Files, and it's one of the best interviews I've ever got a chance to do in my life. He's an excellent talker, and he just is a great academic for legitimizing this stuff for the few people who are ready to step outside their box. The Three Dangerous Magi. This is an amazing piece of nonfiction. It's about Osho, Crowley, and Gurdjieff, and what they thought of each other, who they were. He was a student of Osho, and he knows each of them intimately, their work. He also knows their psychology, how they interacted, so it's an amazing look at how these three great mischievous people changed spirituality in the last century or so. And so, if you're someone who wants to debate about this stuff, as I said, don't debate me, read this book. Read Authors of the Impossible by Jeffrey Kripal. What's wonderful about this book is he goes over some of the important early thinkers about this, like Myers, and as well Charles Fort, who is hilarious and collects the phenomena of this stuff. He goes over the writers who brought out how real this supernormal strange phenomena is. And so if you are a rationalist materialist and you can get through this book and it doesn't change your worldview, well, then at me. Then I'd like to talk. I would be curious how you could possibly continue to think that mind comes out of matter after reading this. So this is probably the best first book to start with because you have a really great history. And as I often say, if you took nothing but data from before the year 1900, you'd have more than enough data for things like ESP, UFOs, blah, blah, blah. This is a cool little collection from Uncle Buck's library. This is Isra Regarde, who is one of the great historians / practitioners of magic, and he is the reason that the Golden Dawn lives on. He was the only person from the original Golden Dawn to initiate somebody in California, so their lineage never actually died out, only because he was an old man and did that. This is his book about Crowley, which is very well done because he knows Crowley is very smart. He met him, he was his secretary, and he knows that Crowley is not a perfect person, but he also knows that he's worth knowing about. So it's a very somewhat Freudian psychological take on Crowley and what he did with his life. If you want to know more about Crowley, this is a really important book to know. If you're very much into the science of this is someone else I interviewed, Harold Atmansbacher, and he talks about the Pauli-Young conjecture and its impact today. This is a series of essays by different people. I think Atmansbacher's essays are very good, but Pauli and Young, more than any of the other quantum physicists, understood the philosophical implications, even though they all did. Niels Bohr put a yin and yang symbol on his coat of arms before anybody thought that was cool. But Pauli and Young knew that nothing happened without being observed by something else, and the interdependent or coordination of all phenomena. This really talks about how the philosophical implications of quantum mechanics are going to play out as we learn more about this supernormal phenomena stuff. So a great piece of science here. And then let's end with a great one. Colin Wilson, the amazing essayist out of England, he wrote a book about the occult after reading about it for 20 years. So take one of the great essayists of all time who has an intimate knowledge of the occult. This is a wonderful first book for anybody interested in this stuff. So that is the one to end with. There's your stack. Let me know if you've read any of them or if you have any opinions on any of these or want to hear any of them explained more. Some of these I've done videos about, some of them I have not. Enjoy!